Hello, everyone. My name is Medvis Jackson. At Next Century Cities, our team is committed to research that highlights our current challenges and available solutions. While 4 in 5 US households have access to the internet of some kind, in 2018, US Census data showed that households where the homeowner has a bachelor's degree or higher, desktop, laptop, computer ownership exceeds 93%. However, in households where the homeowner did not graduate high school, that figure sharply drops to 45%. I encourage each one of you to take some time to browse the case studies, reports, and articles on our website. You will realize the importance of a nuanced and critical view of the challenges we face and an understanding of how visionaries and engaged community partners are critical to our future success. Today, we have with us a special guest who embodies the optimism and leadership so necessary at the local level for working for world-class internet access and adoption that is fully accessible to all residents. Jonathan Paz is Waltham's Ward 9 City Councilor. Boston born and Waltham raised, Paz unseated a 30-year incumbent by running a grassroots campaign that prioritized working families in his first terms. In his first terms, Paz has proposed ubiquitous ordinances to provide tenant protections, realistic affordable housing, and tree protection measures. Councilor Paz is an experienced union representative, having worked at both public and private sector unions. He's worked with SEIU Local 888 and most recently SEIU CIR, where he supported medical residents and fellows at Boston Medical Center and Cambridge Hospital throughout the pandemic. His engagement with and deep focus on Waltham's working classes provides him with a critical understanding of the role that equitable and world-class broadband access and adoption can play in the economic and social well-being of our cities and towns. In his spare time, Councilor Paz dedicates himself to advocacy, salsa dancing, bachata, and chess. He's excited to give back to the city that gave so much to him. So relax and enjoy the next few moments of thought and discussion. I believe that you will come away with a sense of our collective future that is both inspiring and unifying. Councilor Paz, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Medvis, and thank you to Next Century Cities for the opportunity. It is quite an honor here to share the story of Waltham's struggle for digital equity. Again, my name is Jonathan Paz. I'm the Ward 9 Councilor of the City of Waltham. I have the privilege and honor of serving here in the South Side. And yeah, I just would like to thank everyone here who either you're an elected official or an advocate. Thank you for helping develop this social movement for next generation internet. This is a social movement. Unlike any in recent history, the fight for digital equity is a 21st century phenomenon and one that is uniquely intersectional. Access to reliable broadband intersects all facets of social life, from access to virtual classes to working remotely from home to telemedicine. The digital highway is universal. Furthermore, this matter is intersectional in who it impacts. This issue impacts our youth, seniors, working families, people of color. Just about every marginalized and underrepresented group is deeply impacted by lack of access to reliable broadband. So with the following, I want to share some local insights and some stories about our efforts in Waltham, and I would like to end on a more global note. And I would just like to emphasize, digital equity is as universal as it is intersectional. So in short, I want to share the good, the bad, and the ambitious. So a bit about Waltham. Everyone thinks about Massachusetts, we think about Boston. Boston's like the center of the Massachusetts universe. It's not. We have a lot of towns and cities, and in the greater Boston region, we're basically next to Boston. Waltham exists as a blue-collared city for 63,000 people. We have a lot of immigrants. We have a lot of Central American and Ugandan immigrants. Just to give you an idea of what our school system look like, we have over 50% of our student population that's English language learning. So we have a huge Latinx population that's growing, and we have a great need. Actually, yeah, it's like a microcosm of what diversity would look like in Massachusetts. So it is, maybe a little bit, it was a bit of a learning experience for me as I got into office, just how great the digital gap was here. So I want to share two stories as to how we, from a public policy perspective, address digital inequities. And these stories have mixed results. I want to start on a more successful note and then on a less successful note. But really my goal here is to encourage folks to learn from not just my experience, but that of people, of working class people here in Waltham. There's absolutely, I think, a lot to learn, not just from a substantive point, right, technological access, but also from a process point. How do we actually develop better public policy that uses technology to serve the public interest, right? So I want to share the first part on, I think, on a more successful note. So when the quarantine started, we realized immediately that there was a huge digital divide. I got a lot of phone calls from neighbors, some people that were close to me, about a lot of families having to go to Burger King parking lots to access their homework assignments. We had quite a spectacle happening at a private establishment. I remember one particular family that went to a Hannaford's to upload documents to receive rental assistance. Those type of stories traumatized me in a way because these are people that I represent and serve. But also they educate you and inform you that there is a need. So what I did in response to hearing these stories, right, because a lot of our students weren't able to access online education, I sent a strong worded email to our school committee. I copied the mayor and I copied all my fellow city councilors. One would have thought I was being passive aggressive, but in the email, I just made sure they understood, my role may not be in education, but this is a deeply intersectional issue. So what started as an email sparked a broader conversation with administrators, and we did a survey. Essentially, the irony of the survey was that it was for people who had internet. But we realized that over 10% of our student population lacked access to reliable internet. As you can tell, there's an irony behind the statistic because the number's probably larger, right? We had people who were not able to fill out the survey and actually share their need. But what we did was essentially, we started realizing and observing and studying the issue. I ended up connecting a member of our school administration to a neighbor who happened to have he had a previous experience with T-Mobile. So he had experience in the industry and he helped us develop a beautiful private-public partnership with T-Mobile where we fast-tracked an investment for hundreds of hotspots. It's like a multi-year partnership, and we were able to deliver. We delivered hundreds of new hotspots to youth, pretty sizable coverage, and we were able to ramp up our investment in distribution in Chromebooks. So this is, you can say, Councilor, this is a great story. You solved the problem. Not quite. We were able to respond to, let's say, the fire, right? At the start of quarantine, we were able to increase our distribution of hotspots and technology, right? Chromebooks. But it wasn't enough. We did not have enough hotspots to go around. We did not have enough Chromebooks to go around. And we essentially put a Band-Aid into what is a broader problem. And that's just my insights. I think it's a remarkable thing that we came together to help our youth. But what I began to understand, right, was that we had our seniors who didn't have access to technology, didn't even know how to, navigate Internet Explorer. So we realized that we needed a broader, more ambitious solution. Me and another councilor, a few other councilors filed a very ambitious resolution to provide public Wi-Fi in the city. We wanted to create kind of a digital commons, right? So if you needed something, you can step outside and actually access the internet. We did a lot of research. We learned what the difference is from public Wi-Fi to municipal broadband. They're not the same. And we came up with a 3-stage plan. First, we wanted to just provide public Wi-Fi across several key points in the city, from where our points of public transit to our playgrounds to Moody Street, which is kind of the commercial heart of the South Side. We have a lot of shops, we have a lot of barbershops and restaurants. We wanted to make sure that we at least provided access that attracts. We wanted to show people this is something we can invest in, and this is something that can disproportionately benefit your life. The second phase would have been mesh networks, excuse me, essentially for public housing. And the third phase would have been actually investing in municipal broadband, where we would have invested in fiber to home technology. So we did all this research, we presented this resolution, and for months I advocated to the mayor and to my peers, and unfortunately got a lackluster response. We had this beautiful resolution, we had these amazing people, research, subject matter experts come in, and the response was really, I think, insightful. If, of course, disappointing, but very insightful. I remember, there were parents at our PTOs who, from Latinx backgrounds, decided to sign a letter of support. We had 75 Latinx families sign a letter of support and basically advocating for themselves and saying, we really want you to invest in public Wi-Fi. And the response I got was from other councilors, because you're trying to feel the room, you're trying to see what is the political will, and it fell on deaf ears. I had some people, I don't want to name names, and this is not anything antagonizing anyone. It's just, these are some of the responses I got. Some people, municipal leaders, basically asked me, why are you so persistent in giving people free stuff? That it's hard to get me to have a lack of words. But when I heard the word free stuff, I just realized there's a real disconnect, no pun intended, between our understanding of this issue. And I had another one another leader mention, why can't they just work harder and pay for their internet service like everyone else? So, it was clear that, they thought that just providing hotspots to the youth and, doing it for a very short period private-public partnership was enough. So obviously, there wasn't this understanding that this is a very intersectional issue, and it's not just an educational issue. And what ended up happening is, we ended up not doing anything remotely beyond the hotspots. We didn't actually do anything with our capital budget or operational budget that would have amplified or invested on it towards public Wi-Fi or municipal broadband. And of course, the fight's not over. And of course, I think that there's a lot of room for people to learn. And of course, we have federal money that's on the way that can be dispersed in this way. But what I learned from these couple experiences, right? One of them a more successful and one of them a less successful experience, is that we will not achieve digital equity from a top-down approach. There needs to be a community-led effort, and we need community education and leadership as to how broadband works. I'm reminded from the quote by Lila Watson, if you have come here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. So we ended up developing after I couldn't actually have my resolution up for a vote because it wouldn't have actually accomplished much. We ended up developing a community group called High Tech Waltham. And this community group is still in its initiation phase. We've amassed quite a following, from educators to neighbors to other subject matter experts. I am not the most technical person in the room, but we do have very technical and ambitious people who have been willing to volunteer and work together. And we've run into several, we have several projects in mind, like having a digital equity town hall. But we also have diverging goals, let's say diverging views, because some folks come from different backgrounds. And this is the nuance, right? This is the nuance that we can run away from. This is the grassroots at its finest, because we do have differences as to how we view the problem, but we have more differences as to how we will solve it. And this is all to say, we're very much a committee that's up and running, but it's also, I think, representative of some of the actual grassroots efforts and struggles that we will have along the way. Because again, this can't be top down. This needs to be a bottom up effort. So I want to end on a more global note. And I apologize that this goes a little bit beyond the scope of this conference, but I do want to note, I love the comparison to broadband being the new electricity. I think it's genius. I think it's great. But just like electricity, we need to, let's think about electricity. We nuance electricity nowadays because we want clean and renewable energy, right? We understand that global warming is a thing. And it's not suffice to say electricity for all, right? We need a clean and renewable energy grid. And in the same way, we need to advocate for broadband that is net neutral, that ensures data privacy and ensures algorithm fairness. We can't just talk about the digital highway and not mention how worldwide technological innovations are being used against democratic participation. We all heard in the past few days about spyware against journalists and activists. It's old news about government surveillance systems putting down social unrest and social movements, or worse, how algorithms are reinforcing misinformation in America about elections and unfortunately about COVID. We need to do much more than just advocate for broadband. So the question I have for everyone, can the struggle for high-speed, affordable, and reliable broadband be one that promotes democracy and not derails it? Can we do it? I know this is a loaded question, and I believe broadband is part of not just our country's infrastructure, but the social infrastructure of our time. This is a movement for digital equity and justice. And let us remember that as we work together, as we advocate together, and as we push together for a more digitally united world. And I hope you agree. Thank you again for the opportunity to share with you some of our stories. And I'm very much looking forward to questions and answers.
Thank you so much, Councilor Paz. And there are so many layers that need to be peeled apart in the things that you said. And one of the things that you ended on specifically talking about, can we together think about how we can advance broadband and also promote democracy at the same time? Can you talk a little bit about what you think, even if you were to be successful in expanding broadband access, how would that shape democracy and civic participation in Waltham?
Absolutely. I mean, we can simultaneously end the achievement gap, right? It's an old term, but educational achievement, right? We have a lot of students of color who are underachieving. Again, it's a loaded term, but we can make sure that we have better educational achievement because students can actually participate in the classroom, participate offline. And we can also make sure that people have access to the local economy. Right, we can bridge a variety of things, whether they're economic or related to public health. We have a lot of seniors right now who are afraid to step outside, and they may be in need of therapy, or they may want to connect with their families. And those are some of the more heartbreaking stories, right? I remember fielding a question from someone who was like, I don't know how to use my computer, and I miss my family. Mm-hmm. And it's just interesting how bridging the digital divide can also bridge a social divide. So I think in Waltham, we're really a microcosm of what diversity looks like and what those inequities look like. And it's funny because everything points towards digital equity, everything. And bridging these social inequities really translate to that technological need.
When you are thinking about your work to socialize ideas about digital equity, build community support, and really thinking about what did it take to take those first few steps, especially after you recognized that not everyone had the same understanding of why everyone needs equal access and why some people will always need just a little bit more support. Because the comment that you made specifically about saying, why should we give things away? There are people in other cities that are facing that same opposition. So when you're thinking about the work that you did to start building support for digital equity, how did you get started? And what advice would you give to other local officials working on those same objectives?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first one is just making a mental note that if you want to participate in this, you have to be willing to be almost the dumbest person in the room. And that's what I ended up feeling. We reached out to a lot of journalists, to people who were in the industry, private industry, and they had a lot of technological know-how that I had no idea what they were talking about. But that's just on a mental note. You have to be willing to learn. And it's a beautiful thing when you can amass a diverse coalition. And that's really the goal, is to make it a diverse coalition. We have folks who are educators in the school system, to parents, to people who are seniors or helping seniors get access to technology and broadband. And it's just a really, I would say, be humble, build the right coalition, and ensure that, you know, you do focus on that educational piece for the rest of the community. And that's something that we really want to emphasize, is sharing more information, right? In this conference, we're using a lot of beautiful words, but some of them, you know, it could create a more technical barrier, at least linguistically, because a lot of people don't know what the difference is between public Wi-Fi and broadband, or what it means to be, you know, those digital inequities, what those look like. So that's something that we're very much, we learned from Cambridge. We have a lot of advocates in Cambridge, and we really took their lesson to heart, because they said, hey, when you're going to get involved in this, make sure you're not just advocating to the powerful people, right? They told us from day one, form a community group, because power is slow in moving or recognizing, or maybe unwilling to recognize this issue. So I'm thankful for folks in Cambridge, but I'm also thankful for my intern and now ally in the struggle, Julia Geller, who has been helping me push and develop a lot of materials to spread the good word.
Well, we are fans and also your allies, and you also have some support in the chat from David Eisenberg and Frank Jones. I want to lift up a question from Quincy B. How do we best ensure we are providing digital inclusion without transferring community agency and equity upstream?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that I mentioned a little bit, but I think the community needs to be involved or asked and we need better than digital surveys, but we really need to survey our communities and ask people, how do you need it and where do you need it? Because there are places where I think folks really want to have access to broadband, and then there are other people who may feel like there are specific ways that they may need it. And we can't, as public officials, we can't just guess or try to speculate into people's lives, right? And I just knew, for example, the playground idea was something that was pushed from a lot of students, at least something that from a lot of student issues, because students always go to the playgrounds. And if they can bring or do their homework there, we would be elevating this issue, this situation a lot more than just advocating for something else somewhere else, if that makes sense.
It does. And we do have time we'll take one more audience question, but I do want to share something, get your opinion on something. So very often in our filings, we are always want to make sure that we're highlighting that local officials have a different type of accountability to their constituents, specifically because very often you guys might shop at the same grocery store, your kids might go to the same school, you might go to the same church. I think there are different layers of accountability when you are confronted with the people that you have to serve. If you were speaking directly to either federal or state policymakers about the conversations that they are having without local officials, or the conversations that could actually benefit from local input, what would you share?
I would tell them so much. Give us the tools we need to do our job. That is my message. Give us the tools, because if the federal government doesn't do its job, state governments struggle. And if state governments can't do their job, towns and cities pay the price. And I think if COVID has taught anyone anything, at least about government, is that at least municipalities will have your back, because we couldn't flinch or we couldn't think twice before we made investments. Unlike the federal government that's slower, unlike state governments that are a little bit slower. And we had budget deficits to overcome, and we are nearest to the pain. And anyone who wants to, I'm lucky to have a great senator here who's a great advocate, but other senators and US officials, I just want to tell them, give us the tools we need. Don't run away from the job. Don't run away from the responsibility we have to provide to the folks here back home. This is an opportunity maker. It's not something that's free. And this is really the way that we can secure access to what we call the American dream. So I just want them to give us the resources so we can do our job.
I do want to ask you one last question as we wrap up for what's at stake for Waltham and even all of the cities that you touch. That I do want to highlight in the chat for those people who are watching on the live stream from Saul Tannenbaum, a comment saying that as one of those folks in Cambridge, we appreciate Councilor Paz's shout out and wish our own leaders could listen and learn to this lesson. The city believes in top-down solutions that have failed in the past. We hear you, Saul. We appreciate your input. Councilor Paz, when you are thinking about what is at stake for your residents and you are thinking about basically galvanizing not only local leaders, but also community support, what is it that you want them to know about your work and your tenure as councilor?
Thank you. I mean, I think I'm just reminded of people in Burger King parking lots, people needing to go to Burger King parking lots in the 21st century, right? People needing to get kicked out of a Hannaford's superstore to access legal documents or get support. I think about working mothers who suffered from domestic violence and don't have access to the internet to fill out court documents before they're evicted from their house, right? This issue is more salient than ever. And the only way we're going to actually address it is if we address it from a lens of compassion and intersectionality. No one owns this issue. Everyone is deeply impacted by digital inequity. So if we are going to bridge other inequities in our social world, we need to make sure that it's also rooted in technological infrastructure, or else we're not going to get very far. So to those who want to listen, that's my message.
That you shared that to remind people that this is everyone's issue. It doesn't matter if you're a broadband expert or just a concerned citizen. This touches each and every one of us. We can't thank you enough just for sharing your thoughts and your words. And I want to remind you that your passion is contagious, because when we have one municipality that is fired up about broadband, all of the municipalities that they touch benefit. So thank you so much, Councilor Paz. For people who continue to have questions, we are happy to pass those along. We will be sure to share information in the chat. But again, we appreciate your time.